You're listening to Two Girls, One Crossword.
Well, I have something exciting to show you. Yes. I have rented the Twilight DVD once again from my local library. They're like, ma'am, just buy the DVD at this point.
I mean, okay, so Grace messaged me the other day, one of the days that we were in before this day, and was like, thank you. It was like a TikTok, and it was the commentary of Kristen Stewart and Robert Pattinson over the Twilight movie. And she's like, we need to watch this. And I'm like, how many times have we watched this movie? We should, like, the amount of money that we're giving to the industry, like, we should just buy it at this point.
No.
But, I mean, the local library...
It's free.
Yes.
Twilight is free on Amazon. It's going to be free on Netflix. But, I mean, yes, for sure. If you have any of these subscriptions, don't buy the DVD. But if you're interested in the not director's commentary, just the commentary. It's the director, Kristen and Robert.
Okay. So you guys must know what we're going to get up to very soon.
This weekend. It's going to be wild.
What? Actually, by the time you listen to this, we'll have done the deed of watching Twilight with the commentary. So...
Yep. Send us any questions. Maybe
and support your local libraries.
What if there was a Twilight? Oh, yes. Obviously. You know, we love the library and we did a topic on it. Mm-hmm. Maybe one day there'll be Twilight in the crossword. Like Twilight-themed clues in the crossword. Edward Cullen,
right.
17 letters. Someone count it!
How many letters to a name?
If it is in the crossword, we will talk about it right here on our podcast, Two Girls, One Crossword, your favorite weekly Podword crosscast. I'm Grace Topenka.
And I'm Chelsea Rowan. Welcome back to Crazy Town. We are the mayors here, co-mayors. Actually, that would be so much fun. That could actually be one of the jobs we get, Grace. We just like buy a town, because that's how it works. Just buy like a small town and become co-mayors of the town.
But do mayors have to do a lot of work? Because there's some towns where mayors are like a dog, you know? I just want to be like a puppet mayor type situation.
Exactly. We'll have somebody actually pulling the strings behind the scenes. We'll be the external, like the front-facing co-mayor dynamic duo. We'll bring in lots of sponsorship opportunities, entertainment opportunities. You know, like we'll have concerts on the green. Like we'll show up on the stage and be like, "Welcome to the town. Mr. Worldwide is here performing tonight live." That's our job as mayor.
For some reason, I feel like Pitbull did go to some really small town in Alaska that's only accessible via like helicopter or boat, because they like saw him on tour. Like, we would love if, or he had like a competition to see if someone would host a concert for him. And they were like, we're a really small town, but we would love if you came here. And I feel like he went there.
Okay, we were just talking, before we started recording, we were talking about Pitbull, a.k.a. Mr. Worldwide. He really is worldwide. Don't forget it.
Mr. 305, though. That's where
true.
it came from, just like me.
Miami. Is there like a musical set in Miami?
Moulin Rouge.
Oh, right. I love that one.
Yeah. Should we go get into our Pollapalooza?
We should. We took a little bit of a hiatus, so thanks for sticking with us, dear listeners. But we are back, and we do, in fact, have Pollapalooza coming your way right now.
We do. And we asked, which is your favorite Robin Hood movie adaptation? I put adaptation, not adaptation. Is it really a poll if I don't make a typo?
Well,
but does adaptation work too?
I think adaptation is like the less used version. I used to say adaptation, and then I went to film school, and everybody made fun of me when I said it, so I looked it up, and it's technically not wrong, but it's more standard to say adaptation. And then I let the bullies change my life, and now I say adaptation. So don't hate yourself, okay?
Okay. Well, I kind of do things different. Like, I'm not like the other Twitter poll makers, so.
True.
Anyways, the options were Robin Hood Men in Tights, the Disney Fox cartoon version of Robin Hood, The Adventures of Robin Hood, that's like the original one in 1938, and then Robin Hood Prince of Thieves that came out in 1991. And
who won?
Believe it or not, all these little pervs voted that their favorite one with 44% was the Disney Fox cartoon.
Okay, we obviously have a lot of furries following. I'm just kidding. No shame to furries, I guess. But y'all really must think Mr. Foxy Robin Hood is foxy indeed.
Yeah. Like, I never got into that. I already explained. Simba is my weird situation.
Who is my weird situation? Honestly, like, Scar is obviously not a good person. But, like, if I had to pick, he's the sexiest animal there is. He's, like, obviously the goth one.
But you were attracted to him as a child? That's what I'm talking about. Like,
I mean,
whatever. I can't get into this, but everyone knows that one scene of Lion King where Simba goes across the log and then he goes through, like, lion puberty or whatever. There's something about it. There's something special in that scene.
I think I mean, obviously, I can't remember what my childhood animal crush was, but I do remember always thinking that Scar was the bomb. But I also always was really, like, interested in the villain characters because, first of all, they're always queer-coded, so, like, they're the gayest, and, like, I was just more drawn to that as, like, a concept. They were more interesting. Mm-hmm. And, you know, the good guys are just so boring. They've got no trauma, okay? So I go for the bad guys.
Simba has trauma. He saw his dad die, and he blamed it on himself.
It's true. Okay. That's actually the worst. Anyway, okay.
Moving on. So second place with 31% was Men in Tights. That's like the funny one. That was my favorite.
Never seen it.
And then kind of tied for last, 13% was The Adventures of in 1938, and then at 12% Prince of Thieves in 1991. So there you have it. It's Robin Hood for you.
And that is the be all end all be all.
Yeah. And we'll never talk about Robin Hood again.
If we ever mention that name on this podcast, you know what to do.
Sound the alarm.
Speaking of sounding the alarms, should we ding, 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 ding? I tried to do a transition here and failing. Move into the hits and shits?
Yes, we shall. Well, I kind of have, since, we didn't record last week, I have a couple from the week before.
Okay. I have a couple things that I want to talk about. First, before we hop into the actual puzzles, I want to say we got an email from a listener, Bruce Jensen, wrote to us about, I forget what episode this was, but we were talking about a July 2nd New York Times puzzle. Mm-hmm. And in that puzzle, one of the 15 across, like, full spanner answers was secret menu item. And you and I were kind of going back and forth about, are secret menu items like a real thing, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, Bruce wrote to us and said that in the New York Times wordplay column, they actually mentioned, I think it was, here I have it here. This is what was written in the column for the day. Quote, every time I have gone into a Starbucks, which is not often because, whoa, they are expensive, and asked for a secret menu item, the baristas looked at me like I had two heads. And then Bruce also included a comment that was on that actual blog post about, like, from a previous Starbucks barista who said that, like, we do not actually have a secret menu item or secret menu. And the difference between, like, a place like In-N-Out actually has a secret menu that you can find online and that their employees are trained on. So, like, if you go in and you, like, order, like, animal style fries at In-N-Out, they know what the heck you're talking about and they know how to make it, but it's not on their forward facing menu, like, in the actual store. However, Starbucks has a extremely customizable menu, right? And so people online will post, like, I made this awesome drink at Starbucks called the Unicorn Animal Time Cheesecake Frappe Joyride, right? Mm-hmm. And so then you go in and you order that, and the baristas are like, what the heck are you talking about? When it's actually just, like, a vanilla latte with, like, a pump of sprinkles or something in it, And so basically the moral of the story, folks, is if you go into a Starbucks and you're trying to order a quote-unquote secret menu item by name, just order the drink and, like, add your customizations to it yourself. And even then, give the goddamn employees a break, okay? They're just there to make a living, okay? They're not there to be, like, your mixologist, your, like, Michelin star frickin' chef. No.
I hate giving any type of, like, what's it called? Not adjustments, but
that's basically that.
I feel too bad.
I know.
I'll stick with my strawberry acai refresher. Thank you very much.
There's a cafe near us, and whenever I order a bagel, they're always like, would you like that toasted with cream cheese? And I was like, I'll just have the cream cheese on the side because it comes like it's just like a plastic thing they put in the bag. And they're like, would you like that sliced and toasted? And I'm like, no, just put it in the bag and like I take it home. And Matt's always like, well, we could always just get it sliced there. And I'm like, we have knives at home. We have knives at home.
You just expect everything to be handed to you, not me. I work for myself.
Anyway, thanks for writing, Bruce. That was a hit of the past couple weeks to receive your email. We love hearing from our listeners.
We do.
Well, what else? That's that. What if that was it? That was the only thing we had to talk about today.
I think that would be okay.
Same.
We don't owe anyone anything.
You're right.
Well, this was not this past Sunday, but the Sunday before. This is like just a one-off that I thought was funny. The Going Upstairs Washington Post Sunday puzzle by Evan Bernholz on July 18th. There's one question I got it immediately. It was 56 across. Auto racer Dick. And I knew immediately because his son was the Bachelor, and they have the same name, so it was Ari. But I just love. Otherwise, there was no way I would ever know any race car driver, but because Ari Jr., who also is a race car driver, but I believe this was talking about the father.
Papa. Okay.
Yeah, that just made me laugh. I was like, oh yeah, Ari, duh. I'm just a sports genius.
You are. We're really smart over here. Is that it from that puzzle? Or did you have more?
Well, no, I don't have any more from that puzzle.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, also last week, the July 20th, Tuesday, New York Times by Sam Butchbinder. I just thought it was a very topical theme. The revealer was 6 down, Olympic sport whose all-around competition is composed of the last parts of these 4 clues, and it was women's gymnastics, which fit the entire grid from top to bottom. And then the other 4 clues were kind of headlight on older cars, sealed beam, 26 across, observation deck feature not for the squeamish, glass floor, stored deeply and securely in the vault, and then chocolatey treats that you might break me off a piece of Kit Kat bars.
I liked that puzzle. I remembering that. Mm-hmm. It was good. US won silver or something, I think, and then Suni Lee won gold for the uneven bars.
Oh. Yeah, well, no, for all around.
Oh, did she win all around? So
yeah,
I've only been kind of following.
I watched last night's. And then I think they still have to do individuals, but I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that because...
Okay, don't quote us on any of this Olympic stuff.
Actually.
Yeah, seriously.
For that way.
It's better to just write us an email and ask us a question.
Yeah.
Don't quote us. Seriously. I liked the Friday 23rd New Yorker by Anna Schechtman. 15 across. This is for both Grace and I. What quote, was won in a 1962 epic adventure film and what was, quote, was fun in a 1994 Olsen twins film? And the answer was The West, because The West was one, and then The West was fun, 1994. That was a good one.
Is the title How the West Was Won?
How the West Was
How
Fun.
the West Was Fun.
Yes.
I loved that one. Oh,
yeah.
Was anyone else obsessed with twins as a child?
Yes.
I was convinced. Is it because of The Parent Trap? And Sweet Valley High. I feel like twins were everywhere. I was convinced that I had a twin.
I was convinced I deserved a twin.
And if you are a twin now, keep that to yourself. You don't need to rub it in everyone's face.
I don't know. Isn't it true that twins skip a generation? That could be a lie. It could just be like an old wives' tale
Well, it depends. I think fraternal and identical, there's different genetic factors. But I don't think it actually skips a generation. But
well, let's just say that it does because my aunt and uncle are twins, which means that if I were to birth a baby, that would be a skipped generation. I could potentially have twins. Just throwing it out there, not to flex on anybody.
Yeah,
but
could be. Anything
it's potentially in the cards. Okay. So, but anyway, also from that puzzle, this is just a fun thing that I want to talk about. 22 across nowadays, and the answer was anymore, and not very exciting. I mean, good, answer and fill, but not super exciting, right? Except I really like dialects, and I like looking into dialect differences around the United States specifically. And this particular clue and answer reminded me of a well-worn sort of argument, but it's not really an argument that Matt and I have. So where I'm from in South Jersey, it's part of our dialect to use what's called the positive anymore, which is essentially using the adverb in like affirmative context. But apparently, there's 3 standard usages of the word anymore, and they are a negative declarative, which is you don't bring flowers anymore, and then a yes no question, do you go there anymore, question mark, or 3, a hypothetical clause introduced by whether or if, I wonder whether they go there anymore. But using anymore in like a positive like statement is dialectical. So the price of housing is outrageous anymore, or people are rude anymore. I say that kind of stuff all the time, and it drives, he's like, that's not how you use it. And I'm like, I can go to New Jersey and say these sentences to people and they all understand it. And then one day I actually called my most South Jersey relative, and I was like, does this sentence make sense? And she was like, oh yeah, blah. And she started saying sentences with the positive anymore. And Matt was like, what the heck? And then I looked it up, and there's like, what are they called? Dialect or like language people that write about these things, and have confirmed
language people, linguists.
Oh yes, thank you. That the positive anymore is correct, but it is not standard. Apparently, it is commonly
I've never heard
used
that before.
In West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Maryland, and Kentucky, but you might hear it in New York, Ohio, South Carolina, Kansas, Ontario, Michigan, Montana, Iowa, and Illinois.
Wait, did you hear? I didn't hear New Jersey in there. Or did you say that in the beginning?
So Pennsylvania. So I'm from South Jersey,
yeah, okay. Yes,
which is very Pennsylvania. Okay.
We've gone down this rabbit hole before. I've been schooled on the. Well, I'm not going to open that Pandora's
Let's
box.
not open the door, but I just wanted to throw that out there. That's something that I wanted to teach people, and also if you hear it, this is also just a reminder that people speak different dialects, okay?
Yeah.
So just
Mind
because
your business.
Just because somebody says something that you don't think is grammatically correct, it might not be standard in your dialect, but it is standard in other people's dialect. So just remember that. What else you got, Graceella?
Well, speaking of like learning new things, the Monday, July 26th puzzle in the New York Times by Tommy Pauly. 6 down, home of 17 of the 20 highest peaks in the U.S.
Oh, what was the answer? It was Alaska, right?
Alaska.
Yes.
Very cool. And we all know I love Alaska. I've actually been
That's it for today, folks. We're going off air.
Once if I bring up Alaska, the episode is over.
Immediately, I'll just press stop recording. I'm not allowed to talk about South Jersey, and you're not allowed to talk about Alaska. Deal?
Yes. There was another thing that I learned in the New Yorker. When was this? The July 30th by Caitlin Reed. 50 across, New York variant of hopscotch. Potsy.
Okay.
I didn't know that. I looked it up. It's basically a game very similar to hopscotch. I got this information from nycgovparks.org, so a legitimate website.
Okay.
They said it's been played in New York for generations, and it originated in Britain during the early Roman Empire. And it says it's not clear where the word potsy comes from, but it refers to the object used in the game. So like in hopscotch, you usually use a rock, but potsy traditionally is made from 3 safety pins clipped together. But they say a lot of people use like tin cans squished, or like the top of a tin can.
Oh,
so
okay.
I learned about that. And then something else that I had never really thought of, 43 down, facts of little consequence. And it's trivia. And I guess I never really thought of like trivia, trivial. Like, yeah, it is just random, useless knowledge, just like this podcast.
Right. Except when you're doing something equally trivial, like the New York Times crossword or, pub quizzes, that kind of stuff. Yeah. None of it matters, okay? Except crosswords keep the brain fresh. Okay, they help the memory.
Yeah, we're just like trying to hold off dementia as much as possible.
Seriously.
I also liked from this puzzle 58 across, kitchen counter ? And it was oven timer.
Yes,
I just thought
love
it was
that
a fun
stuff.
play on words.
Very nice. Speaking of, there is another clue from the Friday New Yorker by Anna Schechtman I wanted to mention. 12 down, pedal pushers ?
Feet?
The answer was rain boots. How cute.
That's cute.
Right? But, Grace, did you do the Sunday, July 25th New York Times puzzle?
I didn't.
Oh my God. It's so freaking good. It is by Shandy Dietmer. Apologies if I pronounced your name wrong. Apparently it was Shandy's debut with the New York Times, so congratulations. And it was an amazing puzzle. I saw a lot of love for it on Twitter. Would definitely recommend it. The theme is what just absolutely is like a slam dunk. So the revealer is 115 across. One's committing a party foul, or the images depicted in this puzzle's grid, question mark. The answer was double dippers. Okay. But the name of this puzzle was like star signs or star party or something like that. Excuse me, I don't have it written in my notes. But so like, what does double dippers have to do with the stars? Well, there are circles throughout the grid, and those circles are rebuses, okay? And the rebus is the letter I and X, so IX. And you could fill in either I or X. So I works for the across clues, and X works for the downs clues, okay? And then after you finish the puzzle, you can actually connect all the X's, the XI's, or the stars to draw out the big and little dipper within the puzzle. How freaking cool. So other themed answers related to the theme, right? 61 across, Alpha and Beta Ursae blank, pointers to 68 across. And it was Majoris, and the eye of Majoris is one of those rebus squares. And then 68 across is Guiding Light, which is Polaris, both of which have their circle square rebuses in the correct points where they would be in their respective constellations. So like, That's
too much.
The eye of Majoris was in Ursa Major, like the where it needed to be, and then the eye of Polaris was in Ursa Minor, where it needed to be, which is really great. And then even more themed answer, 19 down, celestial figure depicted in this puzzle's grid in African American folklore. So drinking gourd. So in African American folklore, instead of being called the Big or Little Dipper, it might be called like a drinking gourd, because that's what it looks like, right? 9 down, celestial figure depicted in this puzzle's grid in Roman folklore, it would be called 7 oxen. And then at 22 down, celestial figure depicted in this puzzle's grid in Babylonian folklore, wagon of heaven. And some of the critics of the puzzle asked, like, why are we using the letters I and X? And there are people that kind of were like, this is too much. And I'm like, y'all are boring. This is such a creative and fun puzzle. But actually, I read on Michael Sharp's or Rex Parker's blog that if you superimpose the I over the X, it actually creates an asterisk, which is like the right. Well, when I put it in as like a rebus, it's just I and X next to each other.
Yeah,
so
in
like
the app, it wouldn't be as
right. And then speaking of learning about things, part of this puzzle or part of this theme, I learned something really interesting. So first of all, it was really interesting to hear what other cultures called the Big and Little Dipper. So I liked that, right? But 19 down, in particular, celestial figure depicted in this puzzle's grid in African American folklore, drinking gourd. I read on the wordplay blog that this was used as a code to help guide people on a northward route who were using the Underground Railroad or other passages to escape slavery. And so there's actually a ton of African American literature where they refer, like the titles are like, follow the drinking gourd, things like that. And I was like, I had no idea. And that was really interesting.
I've seen that before, but had no idea what it was talking about. But now I know.
Now you know. Anyway, the puzzle's amazing. And then when you finish it in the app or online, it does like the animation where it draws the Big and Little Dipper. Fun. Very cute. Would recommend anyone to do this puzzle. So that's all I got.
Let me see. I think I had some other ones. Oh. The Wednesday New York Times by Alex Rosen and Brad Wilbur. There's just a couple that I liked. 27 across, signal that a reply is coming in a messaging app. Dots. 27 down, what you need some wiggle room to do, question mark. Disco. And then I really liked this one, 29 down, where you might find love away from home. And the answer was tennis camp. I thought that was so witty.
That stumped Matt and I for a while because we were like tennis court, and when there was no other C word that we could think that would go there, that was 4 letters. We were like, I think the first one we did was like tennis club.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't make sense. We're like, none of this makes sense. And then we put tennis camp in. We're like, oh, away from home. Keep it together.
Gotta have camp on the brain. That's all I got too.
Okay, before we flip the coin, I just want to do a gentle reminder to our lovely, lovely listeners that this is the 99th episode of 2 Girls, 1 Crossword. You know what that means, Grace?
Dun. We're almost coming up on the big 100.
100, baby. And boy, oh boy, do we have something fun planned for you guys. I hope you're waiting with bated breath to play along as we quiz each other on our past topics, because it is going to be a wild, hopefully funny ride. I hope we don't come off as completely useless.
I'm not going to set the bar high for myself.
Yeah, so just get excited because it's coming up fast, and we're very excited over here. So,
Yep,
that's it, and that's all. So I guess we should flip the coin.
Flip it, baby. I'm ready. I was born ready.
So she said. All right, I'm flipping the coin now.
Okay.
Tails, man.
That's me. I just got this feeling now that we've done this topic before, but I don't think we have. It's a very Grace topic, and I don't think I've done it before. You may do it, but well, I guess we'll find out. It is from the Friday, July 16th, New York Times by Sophia Maymudis and Kira Wilson. And it is 48 down, spirited message board, ?
Ouija.
Yes.
I don't think we've done this one.
Okay, I mean, I know I didn't do it, but I was like, oh my God, for some reason, I just had this moment that I felt like maybe you did it, but maybe we've brought it up.
I feel like we've done so many occult topics that it's sometimes I'm like, wait, did we do this specific one? Mm-hmm. And I think Ouija has come up peripherally in some of our other topics, but we have not done a deep dive. So you are in the clear, my friend.
All right, good. Well, the Ouija board. Is it a Hasbro board game that once outsold Monopoly, or is it a communication device to the spiritual realm? Is it both?
Well,
maybe?
Well, it probably was. Okay, this is what I'm going to guess.
Okay.
It was a communication board until the, board game industrial complex got a hold of it, okay? And then the spirits were like, we're shutting this door down.
Okay. We will see if that's true. All right, so first, what is a Ouija board? Most people are probably familiar with it, but it is a flat board with the letters of the alphabet arranged in 2 semicircles. It also has numbers 0 through 9, and it has the words yes and no written at the top corners, and then goodbye written at the bottom. It comes with a planchette, and that's the teardrop-shaped device. It usually has a small hole in the middle, and that's used to you put your hands on that, and that moves around the board. So the idea is that 2 or more people sit around the board, place their fingertips on the planchette, ask a question, and watch as the planchette moves from letter to letter, spelling out the answers seemingly of its own accord, or, with the help of the spiritual realm. So I read a lot of different articles on this, and they all interviewed Robert Murch, who is the chairman of the board of the Talking Board Historical Society. And he has been researching the origins of the Ouija board for the past 25 years, so he is the expert.
Okay.
And according to Murch, the origins are kind of a mystery.
Oh.
Well, not really, but there's a little bit of confusion about who really invented it.
Okay.
So, first things first, spiritualism, the idea that the dead can communicate with the living, has been around long before Ouija boards. In cultures all over the world, Ouija board did not invent that. Spiritualism had a big boom in America in 1848. A lot of that started with the Fox sisters of upstate New York. I don't know if you've heard of them, but the Fox sisters, or the Foxes, they claimed to receive messages from spirits who would knock on the walls in order to answer their questions, and they kind of took this medium act to parlors all over New York State.
Ooh.
At this time, in the late 19th century, it was an acceptable, even wholesome activity to contact spirits at seances, through automatic writing, or table-turning parties, which I would love to be invited to, which is a party where participants would place their hands on a small table and watch it shake and rattle while they all swore up and down that they weren't moving it. Even Mary Todd Lincoln herself had seances in the White House. After their 11-year-old son had died of fever in 1862, they would actually hold seances at the White House. It was seen as like normal and not that scary.
You cannot make this shit up.
But it makes sense that people were obsessed with death and talking to dead people at the time, because the average lifespan at that time was 50. You know, women were dying in childbirth, men were dying in war, and children were dying from diseases. So shout out to vaccines. In 1886, there's proof that the Associated Press ran a story about new talking boards that were taking over northern Ohio, of all places. That's where it all started.
Okay.
So it was a talking board with an alphabet and numbers, much like the Ouija board we know today. And news of this board spread throughout the country, but there was one man who decided to take advantage of it.
Robert Murch. Just kidding.
Yes. No. That man was, he's been alive since then, was named Charles Kennard from Chesterton, Maryland.
Okay.
He claims to have invented the modern Ouija board. And guess what? He wasn't a spiritualist at all. He was just a businessman.
I knew it. Okay, well, I guess I didn't get the timeline right, but I knew the board game industrial complex was involved here. You cannot trust anyone.
So Kennard worked next to a man named E.C. Reich, who was a cabinet maker and a coffin maker. Conveniently, he worked right next door, and he kind of helped him start making Ouija boards on the side to sell. Reich claims that he's the one who invented the Ouija board and that Kennard stole the idea. We don't know, if that's true or not. Kennard is the one who ultimately has, got the patent for it and everything, but that's, the kind of mysterious beginnings. We don't know who really invented it. In 1890, Kennard goes to Baltimore and he meets a man named Elijah Bond, who is a lawyer, and he wants to work with Elijah to kind of, get the Ouija board set up, taken to the next level. And conveniently, Bond's sister-in-law, Helen Peters, was a medium. So
convenient.
You got a lawyer and a medium in the same family, perfect business partners if you're trying to sell a Ouija board.
Gotta love it.
And it was Helen Peters who actually came up with the name Ouija, or she helped come up with it. So there is a theory going around. Some people think that Ouija comes from combining the French and German words for yes. So oui and ja, which is how Ouija is spelled. It's O-U-I-J-A. But that's not the story that Kennard tells. So apparently Helen Peters held a seance for Bond and Kennard. And when they asked the board what it wanted to be called, it spelled out O-U-I-J-A. And then they asked the board what that meant, and it spelled out good luck. So.
Okay.
Supposedly the board named itself. And the building where they held that seance in Baltimore still exists, and it's now a 7-Eleven. So if you find yourself in Baltimore, check out the 7-Elevens. But there's an alternate explanation for where that name came from that's not as cryptic and spooky. So Helen Peters admitted that she was wearing a locket that had a picture of a woman in it and the word Ouija above her head. And I guess she thought this was a coincidence or whatever. But some people believe that the woman in the locket was a famed author and women's rights activist, Ouida, with a D. And that Ouija was subconsciously in Peters' head because she had seen that other word. And that's what she spelled out on the board. So
okay,
that could be it.
All right.
Next step, Elijah Bond goes to file a patent, but the patent office says, you need to prove that this board actually works before we can give you a patent. So, story has it that Elijah took his sister-in-law Helen Peters to the patent office in Washington, D.C., and the chief clerk there said, if that contraption can spell out my name, then you've got your patent. And supposedly, Helen and Elijah didn't know his name, but Helen took out the Ouija board and it spelled the chief's name. So the clerk, he's kind of spooked, and he gives him the patent. He's like, okay, here, you got this. So they did get the patent, but the patent doesn't talk about why it works. It doesn't get into that detail. But the mystery behind the game and behind the patent kind of worked in its favor because it ended up being great marketing, and it was a huge moneymaker at the time that it came out.
Imagine rolling up to the patent office and the guy's like, prove that your board game actually communicates with spirits, and like you're like, oh wait, like I actually have my medium sister on speed dial, and you call her, and like Helen rolls up, and she's like, let's talk to some ghosts, and you just do it right there.
Helen was probably an interesting character, and it was his sister-in-law. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay, but keep in mind, this all happened during like the Victorian era. So the Ouija board kind of broke a lot of social rules they had at the time, because then you weren't supposed to be alone with people of the opposite sex. You definitely weren't supposed to be touching, but the Ouija board was designed so that you would put it on your knees and your fingers would touch. So it kind of became like a date game.
Ooh.
And the original directions said that for the best results, use with 2 people, a lady and a gentleman.
Ah, okay. So
a lot of men would like buy it for women so that they could use it together and, get cozy.
Very cute.
The ownership of the company did have some dark times, though. Kennard and Bond eventually got out of business, claiming that money changed everything. So the darkness of the Ouija board took over. Ooh. They sold it to a man named William Fuld, who had gotten in like at the ground floor, and then he eventually, owned the company. But the creepy fact about him is that he died in 1927 after a freak fall from the roof of his new factory, a factory he said the Ouija board told him to build. So did the Ouija board kill him?
Oh, the Ouija board was like, I want my real mommy and daddy back.
Exactly. The board has seen a prolonged period of success up until current day. SmithsonianMag.com says, quote, "This is proof that it tapped into a weird place in American culture, both mystical and family-oriented. The board appealed to all types of people, anyone who wanted something to believe in." And continuously, we see that the Ouija board has the most popularity during uncertain times. So in the 1910 and 20s, post-World War I, and during the Prohibition, there was a surge in popularity. So much so that in May 1920, Norman Rockwell, we all know, he does like the blissful 20th century American domestic culture, he drew a painting of a man and a woman, a Ouija board on their knees, communing with the spiritual world, and it's on the cover of the Saturday Evening Post. So Ouija board even made it into like Norman Rockwell Americana culture.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Ouija boards even outsold Monopoly in 1967. That was during the time of like the Vietnam War and everything. So another tumultuous time.
Oh my God. Okay. We also did a topic on Monopoly a ways back.
Yes.
If you're interested in like board game stuff. So go searching.
That's also very interesting. Switcheroo.
And yes, that's a surprising topic.
Mentions of Ouija boards continuously pop up in American newspapers. In 1921, the New York Times reported that a Chicago woman who was being sent to a psychiatric hospital tried to explain to doctors that she wasn't suffering from mania, but that Ouija spirits had told her to leave her mother's dead body in the living room for 15 days before burying her in her backyard. In 1941, a 23-year-old gas station attendant from New Jersey told the New York Times that he joined the army because the Ouija board told him to.
Convenient. Okay, so now the military is recruiting through the Ouija boards. Great.
Yes. You can't escape that propaganda. In 1958, a Connecticut court decided not to honor the so-called Ouija board will of Mrs. Helen Dow Peck, who left only $1,000 to 2 former servants, but $152,000 to Mr. John Gale Forbes, a spirit who had contacted her via the Ouija board.
Okay.
The Ouija board even helped write books. In 1917, Emily Grant Hutchings claimed that her book, Jap Heron, was communicated to her via Ouija board by the late Samuel Clemens, a.k.a. Mark Twain.
Gotta love Marky. Marky Mark.
Yes. I mean, even very serious authors claim to use the Ouija board. In 1982, Pulitzer Prize-winning poet James Merrills had a poem called The Changing Light at Sandover. It won National Book Critics Circle Award, and he claimed that it was Ouija-inspired and dictated.
God, I love this.
Yes. So overall, the Ouija board had a pretty good, non-threatening reputation. Even Lucian Ethel hosted a seance using a Ouija board. Mm-hmm. But this all changed in 1973.
Oh.
Yes. Just like Psycho all of a sudden made showers scary, The Exorcist made the Ouija board scary.
Ooh.
In the movie, Reagan gets possessed with a demon after playing with a Ouija board.
Ooh.
So basically, overnight, Ouija became a tool of the devil. Horror writers and movie makers jumped on the bandwagon. It began popping up in media all over the place, usually as a way to open doors to evil spirits. It was denounced by Christian religious groups. Sales remained high, but it became less spiritual and more spooky. But now, what everyone wants to know, how do they work?
Tell me.
Most of this is from nerdist.com. Instructions on how to use the board have remained unchanged. 2 or 3 people lightly place their fingers on the planchette, ask a question, and let the spirit guides move the planchette around the board. It could be yes, no, goodbye, spell out an answer, etc. But is it really spirits? Well, science offers another possibility, that you are unconsciously answering questions that you never thought you could. Quote, 2 factors are at play when using a Ouija board: a strong subconscious need for an answer to a question, and a phenomenon known as the ideomotor effect. So according to the ideomotor effect, people can move something without their conscious mind even realizing it. So another example of this unconscious movement would be like washing the dishes or driving a car. For example, if you ask the board a question that you secretly want to be a yes, you or your board partner can subconsciously push it towards yes the whole time. You don't think you're applying any force at all. But if you really think you can keep your hands perfectly still, then try like pointing a laser beam at a single point on the wall. You won't be able to. And actual research studies have been done on Ouija. So Mark Anderson at Aarhus University in Denmark led a research study that tracked eye movement of 40 experienced Ouija board users at a Ouija board conference. And thanks to eye tracking, the research showed that at least one of the Ouija board users knew where the planchette was going. So they would see one person's eye would go to the letter before the planchette would get there. A quote from the study, quote, "Our study suggests that successful Ouija board sessions critically depend on joint action. The spooky or paranormal feeling that Ouija boards induce is due to the fact that participants take turns in predicting the next letter." Ouija research studies have also been used to study the unconscious mind. Helen Gaucho through the University of British Columbia ran an ideomotor effect study on the Ouija board in 2012. Study participants were paired with partners and a Ouija board. They were blindfolded and asked factual questions, and they were to let the Ouija board answer yes or no. However, when the questions were asked, their partners were instructed to remove their hands from the planchette, meaning the study participants were answering alone. And they found that when asked to answer questions that they thought they didn't know, people gave more accurate responses with a Ouija board compared to when they were answering verbally.
Interesting.
So when they were kind of like, when they thought they were guessing with the Ouija board, they had 65% accuracy versus 50% accuracy when they were just answering themselves verbally.
Interesting.
Gaucho says, quote, "The surprising findings suggest we have a powerful second intelligence resting beyond our conscious minds that can be accessed under the right conditions. We may believe we don't know an answer consciously, but actually have the answer right there in our subconscious. Maybe we heard it on the radio, but weren't really paying attention." So, in conclusion, Ouija boards are a result of commodifying actual spiritualism, and you probably aren't talking to actual dead people, but you could be talking to your deep subconscious, which is just as cool.
Yes. Oh, this idea of like deep subconscious, like I should do more research. I've done zero research into it. But I find like, since I'm a writer, I find that sometimes I completely like blank out as I'm writing. And then like, what I have on the page after I finished writing, first of all, it's coherent. And honestly, like the things that come out of my brain, like through my fingers, it's like, I don't think I could ever form that as like a sentence, as like a cognizant person in like a conversation. And sometimes I'm just like, how do these things come out? And I sometimes wonder, like, is there something subconscious going on? Anyway, like I said, I've done zero researching into this, but I'm often like, where does this come from? Like, truly, like, because I feel like I'm blacked out when I'm writing sometimes. Anyway, maybe there is someone down there.
You think of how many things you like take in throughout your life that, you know, you don't think you remember, but it is the more, you know, it's like the SpongeBob episode. You have all those file folders out there and your little minis are in there like, we got this.
Exactly. It's interesting. There's a couple points in your topic that they're not related to my topic at all, really, but they also touch my topic in interesting ways. So hopefully I remember to bring them up. If not, try to remember to ask me what they are at the end of my topic.
I'll try to remember, but I can't make any promises.
Okay, because I didn't write it into my script, these things. So, you know, I struggle. Anyway, so my topic comes from the Friday, July 16th New Yorker by Patrick Berry. 34 down. items to remove indoors per Emily Post.
Shoes.
Hats.
Oh.
And
Indoors.
Indoors. So I'm not talking about the great indoors or hats. I'm talking about Emily Post. One Mrs. I guess Miss, technically. Emily Post. Ms. with a Z. One Z. Emily Post. So do you know who Emily Post is? It's fine if you don't.
I don't. She doesn't like hats indoors.
Indoors. She does not like hats indoors. Okay, so who the heck is Emily Post and why do I want to talk to you about her? First and foremost, she was an American author and socialite, but she is most famous for her writings on etiquette, which I will talk about later. Born Emily Bruce Price in Baltimore, Maryland in 1872, so just a little later than when the initial Ouija board craze began.
She probably played a Ouija board.
I think she probably played a Ouija board once or twice. So her father was a famous architect, and her mother was a daughter of a wealthy coal baron. And so I wasn't going to bring this up because I didn't think it was relevant, but one of the most famous like communities that her father architected or designed, right, was this place called Tuxedo Park in New York. And it was just a bunch of really beautiful cottages that Emily Post lived in at one point in her life. But you know who also lived in one of these cottages? Or at
Mark
least
Twain.
Yes.
That
I'm telling you, man, it's weird how our the subconscious has connected our topics today. Anyway.
I only knew that because I actually know a lot about Mark Twain.
Are you kidding?
No, I don't.
Anyway, so that yeah. Anyway, so yeah. That was Mommy and Dad. So yeah, Emily Post lived an extremely affluent life. And as a young woman, because she was rich, she attended Miss Graham's finishing school in New York. So if you don't know, finishing schools are schools for young women that focus on teaching social graces and upper-class cultural rights. And it is supposed to be a way for women to prepare to, quote, enter society. And we talked a little bit about this concept of entering society in episode 65, Girls Are to, Women and Boys Are to Wolves. I think that's the name of it.
Yes, naturally.
And so the entering society for women was essentially like you were biologically able to bear children. And so you were at any age, as soon as you got your period, as soon as you're able to like literally form a baby in your belly, mom and dad were like, sell her off for a marriage. And then you would like basically become like someone's property and then like have their kids for the rest of your life. So that's one of the reasons why women would go to finishing school, right? To be prepared to enter society. And finishing schools are called finishing schools because you're supposed to, quote, finish your education there. But education is not used in the sense of like academic education. It's etiquette education. Academic education was very much secondary. And sometimes you didn't even have like academic classes at these finishing schools. And yeah, one of the main goals is to make you a more eligible match for marriage. So Emily Post went to finishing school, okay? And after finishing school, she married a man named Edwin Main Post, who was a big-time banker at the time. They met at a ball at a Fifth Avenue mansion in New York City. Cool. They ended up having 2 children together, but eventually divorced in 1905 due to her husband's multiple affairs, which he was cheating on her with a bunch of chorus girls and actresses, and they were blackmailing him. And so Emily Post was like, bye, and divorced him.
I'm surprised she got divorced in 1905.
I know, it's actually kind of surprising.
Possible back then.
I know. So now she's a single mother of 2, and she needed a way to support herself and her children. And once her sons were of an age to be sent to boarding school, she decided to try her hand at writing to like earn money. And initially, she wrote about architecture and interior design for a bunch of magazines. She wrote short stories for Harper's and Scribner's. She also wrote travel books. She published 5 novels between 1904 and 1910. But like I mentioned before, she's most well known on her writings for etiquette. She was prolific. I mean, like, I'm writing a novel and I can't even get the goddamn thing done. And she's like popping them out left and right. I guess there's nothing really. They didn't have TikTok, okay?
Yeah. It's different times.
Different times.
We went over this with the Bronte sisters.
We really did. Okay, so... Okay.
We're not salty.
No. No. I mean,
Us? Doesn't sound like us.
no, I'm like the least salty person there is. I'm actually quite sweet. Thank you.
Nice.
Thank you for the laugh. I appreciate that. Okay, so etiquette. What the heck is etiquette? Wikipedia defines etiquette as, quote, the set of conventional rules of personal behavior in polite society, usually in the form of an ethical code that delineates the expected and accepted social behaviors that accord with the convention and norms observed by a society, a social class, or a social group. And so etiquette is extremely important in all cultures and all societal groups. Whenever humans gather, groups begin forming rules or normalized practices and habits that you're supposed to follow in order to survive or to fit in, right? Like Grace and I are a societal group and we have our own quote unquote etiquette within our group that makes it possible for us to thrive and to survive as a unit, right? Mm-hmm. And that remains true for literally every type of human group of every size. So we're talking interpersonal all the way up to country-wide or even like universe, right? Okay. But what I find interesting, so I got a lot of my information from a really, really awesome biography of Emily Post on time.com. And in it, they talk about how Americans have a unique relationship with the concept of etiquette, notably because we are an immigrant nation or colonizer nation, LOL, whatever you want to call it, right? We are supposed to be a, quote, society of equals, which means we do not have a king. We do not have an aristocracy, right? So that means America, from the time we were, quote unquote, founded until now, like we don't have an aristocracy or like that royal upper class to look to influence or inspire or to teach us the correct ethical or etiquette codes of society. So we're kind of left just like raw dogging it, basically. Okay?
That's America.
That's America. And so, you know, America is rapidly developing. And the citizens, as such, because we don't have the aristocracy to look up to, are suffering from a sort of collective status anxiety. Okay? Especially during the time when Emily Post was alive. So Emily Post was writing during the Gilded Age, and the Gilded Age was a period of rapid economic growth. Wages were increasing rapidly for workers, right? But it was also, on the flip side, a time of extreme economic disparity. So you have a huge influx of immigrants from all over the world, and you start to quickly realize that this economic growth that you're seeing is reserved for a very specific segment of the population, the 1%. Okay. At the same time, a middle class is starting to appear in America. So you're not just like extreme poor and extreme rich. You're starting to see a middle class as well. But everybody in America is like, how do I fit in? How do I act? Like we don't have like a system in place of like what is the correct way to present and be yourself in society. And it was a lot of it was Americans like kind of mimicking or aping what they thought was correct society that they would have seen in like England, for instance, or France, right? And so during the early days in the US, it was normal for Americans to depend on manner manuals to guide them on how to interact and succeed in daily life, in business, interpersonal relationships, everything. And most etiquette books in early American history were reprints or translations from English or French sources. One of the most famous and popular etiquette books from the colonial era was called Eliza Moody's School of Good Manners, originally based on a French courtesy book from the 16th century. That is the 1500s. And it was first printed in the US in 1715. So we were kind of like a little behind the times. We didn't really know what to do.
I feel like a lot of stuff, it's like, well, I can't even make enough jokes. I don't know enough about different lifestyles at the 16th century. But it's like when you go to your
lord
neighbors, like, yeah.
You bow 3 times in quick succession and you spit to the left. I don't know. That's etiquette. So then Emily Post came along and she was like, don't worry, America, I got you. And so she printed or published her first book on etiquette in 1922. It is called Etiquettes in Society, in Business, in Politics, and at Home, and it's frequently just referred to as etiquette. She was 50 years old when she published it, and it was 627 pages long. And what would you find in these 627 pages? Literally, it was from cover to cover a book on the correct manners and the correct social rules to follow.
I can't keep track of 600 pages worth of rules. I need like a cheat sheet.
Yeah, me too. I tried to find a good cheat sheet online, and they were directing me to the Amazons to buy her book, and I'm like, not right now. Not right now.
Maybe later.
Okay, yes. And so we have to remember that Emily Post was writing about manners from a position of affluence, okay? She lived an extremely privileged lifestyle, and it's kind of impossible to completely remove some of the classism from her early etiquette guides, right? That being said, her philosophy on etiquette was surprisingly egalitarian for the time. Okay, we're talking late 1800s. Post claimed that anyone who does not live alone in a cave can be part of society. But becoming part of best society requires education, cultivation, and training. Okay, so you could be born in the mud, and with just the right amount of training, you can be part of best society. And that's kind of like part of like this American dream, right? Like, go west, young man, like the manifest destiny, like anything's possible. It's not really actually true because there's systems in place to keep people down. But it's a nice thing to think about, right? In Europe at the time, best society was anyone from the aristocracy. And it was considered in the United States that best society was anybody of the aristocracy of wealth. So if you were like an oil baron or you owned a newspaper. But Post decided that wealth or rank without cultivation was merely pretense. Okay, so you could be the richest man in the room, but you could be the least civilized person there if you didn't know how to hold yourself correctly. So people who thought their wealth was sufficient to make them fit for, quote, best society were what Emily Post said, quote, classified as the court gestures of today. We also talked about court gestures, so go find that topic somewhere in the archives. She insisted that good breeding, which I hate that phrase, good breeding, was more than knowledge and compliance with the rules of society. Quote, best society is not a fellowship of the wealthy, nor does it take to exclude those who are not of exalted birth, but it is an association of gentlefolk of which good form in speech, charm of manner, knowledge of the social amenities, and instinctive consideration for the feelings of others are the credentials by which society the world over recognizes its chosen members. Okay. I'm not against that.
Yeah.
In summary, that essentially means that kindness and good breeding were open to anyone who took the time to study them, okay? So her book, Etiquette, was an immediate bestseller. It topped the nonfiction bestseller list. And thanks to the book, the name Emily Post and the phrase, according to Emily Post, entered the American lexicon as the last word on social conduct. And so in the clue, it was like, things that need to be taken off inside per Emily Post. Hats, like you would just know immediately that Emily Post means good etiquette. And I think our generation, we really don't have that in our lexicon. I think probably our parents and their parents probably were more well-versed in like the Emily Post etiquette guides than we are. But apparently
we have no etiquette. We wear hats inside all the time.
We definitely do. Wait until I get to some of these etiquette rules, and then we're going to decide if these things still happen to this day. Okay? And this is a fun fact I found. Apparently there was a time when etiquette was the second book most likely to be stolen from the public library, second only to the Bible. Good for
Stealing
you.
the Bible.
Good for Emily Post, I guess.
Yeah.
And the book has been updated frequently to reflect societal changes, such as diversity and redefinitions of family. For instance, the first edition has a section on chaperones and other conventions. This was later modified to the vanishing chaperone and other new conventions. Later editions added guides on television, telephone, and airplane etiquette. And then the most recent guide is the 19th edition, and it was published in 2017. It was actually authored by some of her descendants. Their names are Lizzie Post and Daniel Post Senning. So it's still
So they're still updating it.
They're kicking to the day. Okay.
It's like social media etiquette. I wonder if that's on there.
It is. We'll talk a little bit about that, like a very little bit.
Okay.
There is a review of an Emily Post biography in the New York Times written by Danita Smith. And in that review, Danita Smith says, quote, such books had always been popular in America, The country's exotic mix of immigrants and newly rich were eager to fit in with the establishment. Men had to be taught not to blow their noses into their hands or to spit tobacco on ladies' backs. Arthur M. Schlesinger, who wrote Learning How to Behave, a historical study of American etiquette books in 1946, said that etiquette books were part of the, quote, leveling up process of democracy, an attempt to resolve the conflict between the democratic ideal and the reality of class. But post-etiquette books went far beyond those of her predecessors. They read like short story collections with recurring characters, the top lofties, the eminents, the rich and vulgars, the gildings, and the kind hearts, end quote. So Americans really loved Emily Post. She made them laugh. She gave them confidence and delivered a certain quality that encouraged anyone with any background to be considerate and aware of those around them. That's why she was so successful. And then in 1946, Emily Post and her son Ned founded the Emily Post Institute. It's called the EPI for short. They promote good manners and civility in America and around the world. It's located in Burlington, Vermont. Bernie Sanders lives there too. And this, I'm surprised. So you'll have to go on the Emily Post website, first of all of the listeners. But they offer classes, so you can take classes. They have an extensive blog collection with etiquette tips for literally every aspect of your life. I kid you not. Just a couple offhand is email etiquette, do's and don'ts of thank you notes. I can't even give you all of them. They have traditional etiquettes about announcing a birth, announcing a wedding. This is how you should act as a host. Everything you can imagine. If you're wondering what do I wear to a wedding? You can go on the Emily Post Institute and they have an article for that. So they also act as consultants for news outlets and corporations. So they do it all. They have a podcast. They got everything. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Wow, a podcast.
They got a podcast.
Want to collab with us?
Hello, we're open.
We could use help.
We could use help. And then sadly, Emily Post died in New York City in 1960, but she was 87 years old, so she had a great life. Okay? So I'm going to talk about the principles of etiquette according to Emily Post and the Emily Post Institute, and then we're going to talk about some specific Emily Post etiquette rules.
Okay.
So first of all, etiquette, according to Emily Post, is made up of two parts. The first part is manners. So these are your pleases and thank yous, holding doors, chewing with your mouth closed, dressing appropriately, and shaking hands. According to the Emily Post Institute, manners, quote, give us confidence, allow our focus to be on the substance of our interactions, and they tell us what to do and what to expect others to do in return, plus they are nice, end quote. The second part of etiquette is the principle of etiquette. And the principle of etiquette is made up of three parts: consideration, respect, and honesty. These principles stand behind all the manners that we have. They're timeless, and they cross cultural boundaries, unlike manners, which can change over time. For example, handshake. A handshake is a very Western gesture, right? In ancient Rome, so a handshake, Western gesture, but it's a Western manner, okay? In ancient Rome, you would have grasped somebody on the forearm. In Asia, you might bow to people when you meet them. These are examples of manners. But the idea that we shake hands, grasp forearms, or bow to show respect and welcome another person is the universal and timeless principle. So simply put, manners are the how and principles are the why. Mm-hmm. Okay?
Okay, that makes sense.
So that's all you need for etiquette. Okay, so why don't we talk about some examples of Emily Post etiquette? And some of these you may still follow today. Others might be outdated. It's up to you to decide. Okay. I included this one because I thought it was hilarious. On the correct way to eat corn on the cob, quote, to attack corn on the cob with as little ferocity as possible is perhaps the only direction to be given, and the only maxim to bear in mind when eating this pleasant to taste but not very easy to manage vegetable, is to eat it as neatly as possible. The real thing to avoid is too much buttering all at once and too greedy eating, end quote.
I agree with that. My family and I used to go to this family style seating barbecue place, and they would bring out super buttery corn on the cob, and I hated it because everyone would be biting into it and the butter would be splurting everywhere, and it's family style, so you're sitting next to random strangers.
We always cut the corn off of our corn on the cob with a knife.
That's dignified.
Talk about etiquette, okay?
But not as fun.
It's not as fun, but I hate getting this stuff in my teeth, the corn. You know, like biting it and then you get like the corn pieces in your teeth. I'd rather just cut it off. And also, there's like a texture thing when you cut it off. Sometimes the kernels stay together and then you eat it and it just feels good in the mouth. And this is why I definitely have ADHD, because of the
truth comes out.
The truth comes out. The sensory like excitement that I get from eating cut corn on the cob. Anyway, next rule of etiquette. This is how you dress appropriately for dates. Quote, "It is always better to be under than overdressed. Should she discover that her date is dressed for bowling while she thought they were going to a cocktail party, she should excuse herself for 10 minutes, no more, while she hastily changes into something more casual."
Oh, you just bring outfit changes with you?
I think this is from one of the older editions, and it's if the date is coming to pick you up, which usually there's like part of etiquette, you're supposed to pick up your date, right? Mm-hmm. So, no, nowadays, if you're going on a date, like, you either live with the person you're going on a date with and you leave the house together and you know what the heck's going to happen, or you're like, meet me at the train stop, and then you meet them at the train stop and you get there and you see, like, you're in a cocktail dress and they're in, like, jeans and you're like, oh, shit, too bad. Do
you feel like it's always better to be underdressed than overdressed?
I prefer overdressed.
Yeah, what's more embarrassing, being overdressed when everyone else is in jeans or being underdressed and everyone else is really fancy? I feel like I would rather be overdressed.
I'd rather be overdressed, and I think that might be something that has changed.
Yeah.
But I agree. Like, I don't want to, like, show up to a cocktail, like, party in jeans because I underdressed. Sorry. I'd rather be in a ball gown. Like, hello. All right, next one. On refusing to dance. To refuse to dance with one man and then immediately dance with another is an open affront to the first one. Excusable, exactly. Excusable only if he was intoxicated or otherwise offensive, so that the affront was justified. Okay, first off, all men are just baseline offensive. So you have to work really hard to, like, not be offensive. So basically, women, you can refuse to dance no matter what because all men are offensive. So it's fine.
Anyone can refuse to dance with whomst ever.
Whomst.
They don't want to dance with. You are not entitled to dance with anyone.
Sorry, Emily
Or
Post.
no one's entitled to dance with you.
Yeah, I think
that's gender.
That's also an older one. I don't think that's from 2017. On eye makeup, this is also another old one. Heavily made up eyes belong only on the stage or in the chorus line. Which, I mean, yes, but also I like to pretend I'm on the stage at all times. Not that I wear heavily done up eyes, but should I do?
I always wear stage makeup.
She does. She's actually in a full clown face right now. That's why you should actually hop over to our YouTube and see.
I actually go to my local mortician because they really get a good solid base on there for me.
She always looks so cakey. I love it. I love it.
It's a choice, a style choice.
It's true. Take that, Emily Post. Here are some others. Always send handwritten thank you notes.
I like that.
I like that too. It depends on what it is though. Like if I got 3,000 gifts, I'm sorry. Nobody's getting a thank you note at that point.
I'm sending you a text that says TY exclamation. I don't write thank you notes, so.
Yeah, no.
It's a non-issue for me. Next.
So take your hat off inside, but also when a lady enters a room or an elevator.
What if you are a lady?
Take off your bucket hat, Grace.
No, never.
A gentleman should always stand when a lady enters a room. Actually, I feel like I want that to continue happening because I deserve the utmost respect whenever I enter a room. It doesn't have to be just a gentleman. I feel like everyone should stand when I enter the room. And then I'll be like, yes, please sit down.
That would be fun.
This is perfect for stroking my ego. So.
But I also feel like if I came in and someone stood up, I'd be like, what are you doing? Like, are you leaving? You're making me nervous.
Yeah, are you anxious? You're making me anxious here, for sure. Here's another one. Butter your bread one bite at a time. That's actually something I learned as a kid. Like, my aunt taught me that. She taught me a lot of, like, dining etiquette that I still do to this day, but apparently is extremely outdated. Like, when you're finished eating, and you want to signal to the waiter to take your plate, you put your fork and knife on your plate, but the fork has to be upside down on like the left side of the plate. And that signifies to take your plate away.
I think I learned that in home ec too. But I feel like buttering after every bite is a little more like rabid than, I guess you're taking dainty bites. I just imagine them being like slosh bite versus just getting a nice layer in the beginning.
Another one is like when you're eating soup, you're supposed to eat soup like the spoon away from you and not towards you.
Oh, there are too many rules.
Too many. And you got to remember all of this if you want to be in best society. All right, here's another one. The bride always chooses the bridesmaid's dress, but the bridesmaid always pays for them. I think that has held up to a point for some people, but I do think there's like a little bit of wiggle room now. Sometimes bridesmaids are given the option to choose one of 20 styles.
Yeah.
What else? Here's one. Be considerate. Consideration for the rights and feelings of others is not merely a rule for behavior in public, but the very foundation upon which social life is built. Never do anything that is unpleasant to others. So that is referencing the men who spit wildly on streets.
I feel like this always comes up in our episodes.
I don't hate men, but I do hate spitting in the streets.
Yeah.
Which tends to be like a man thing. Fix it. Next one. Be quiet. All people in the streets or anywhere in public should be careful not to talk too loud. I agree, except when it's me. I kind of like shouting down the street with you.
Yeah. Well, my voice doesn't get that loud. So I'm just naturally polite, I guess. I actually do hate when people talk really loud. Like, my mom has a naturally really loud voice, and sometimes I'm like, you're yelling, and there's no reason for that. Right. Some people can't help it, and I know some people may be self-conscious about that, but...
Right. Except if you're doing a bit on a train in a British accent.
Yeah, that's different. That's performance. So we have to, like, if people can't hear us, then what's the point? What are they paying for then?
Exactly. Another one, don't talk too much. The chatterer reveals every corner of his shallow mind. One who keeps silent cannot have his depth plumbed.
It's true.
It's actually a huge insecurity of mine. I feel like I talk incessantly, and I'm so self-conscious that like I'm just talking without a filter. So if I ever seem like I'm just not shutting up, we should have a signal. You should just like tap the inside of your arm twice on both sides, and then I'll know to like shut my mouth.
That'll be subtle. Yeah, I feel like sometimes it's nice to be mysterious.
It is. Here's a good one. Choose the plainer dress, related to what we were talking about earlier. There is one rule that is fairly safe to follow. When in doubt, wear the plainer dress. It is always far better to be underdressed than overdressed. If you don't know whether to put on a ball dress or a dinner dress, wear the dinner dress. Wrong! You should wear a ball gown to every dinner. You
only live once. Wear the ball gown. What's the point of having 5 ball gowns if you never wear them?
Exactly. The last one, do not arrive early. And actually, please follow this one. Walk around the block. Go pick up some fresh flowers. Anything. It is rude and it puts your host in an uncomfortable position. So whatever you do, do not arrive before the time listed on the card.
I agree with that. Mm-hmm. Sometimes people have come in for interviews and they arrive like 30 minutes early. I'm like, that's so awkward. Then you're just sitting in the lobby.
Right. I feel like there's this like axiom that gets put around like if you're early, you're on time. If you're on time, you're late. And if you're late, you're dead or something. I don't know what the ending is.
Something like that.
It's almost exactly that. There was actually another interesting one that I read in an article on Vanity Fair, I think, about like how to be a guest and a host at a dinner party. And one of the things is like, always ask your host what to bring. And if your host says nothing, the tip is literally don't bring anything, because that's what your host said. And like, to be a good guest is to listen to your host. And then it says, but if you literally cannot relax enough to not bring anything, bring something seasonal, like a jam or flowers already in a vase. Like, they have to be in a vase already. Like, you shouldn't bring fresh flowers, but not have a vessel for them to put in, because you can't assume that everybody has vases. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's, like I said, millions of these articles online. Look them up. I'm ending with 2 quotes from Miss Emily Post herself. The first.
Okay.
Whenever two people's lives come together and affect one another, you have etiquette. Etiquette is not some rigid code of manners. It's simply how people's lives touch one another. Going off the rules we just heard, it seems kind of rigid, but okay, pop off, Emily Post. And then the last quote. Good manners reflect something from inside, an innate sense of consideration for others and respect for self.
All right. I feel like, well, could you bring like a bottle of wine, maybe?
In the Vanity Fair article, they say literally how many bottles of Pinot Grigio do we have to go through before people stop bringing wine to dinner parties? And I was like,
Okay. Well, first of all, I don't get invited to dinner parties, so it's not an issue.
right? All of these are non-issues. Like, when's the last time a man has asked me to dance? Like, never. And like, when's the last time? And when's the last time have I had to decide between my ball gown and my dinner gown? Like, never.
That's on you.
It's true. It is on me. When's the last time I've eaten a corn on the cob? Never. Never had
I haven't
corn.
eaten a corn on the cob in a while, actually.
It's true.
I can't remember the last time.
I know. So that's that and a bag of chips, and that is Miss Emily Post for you.
Thank you. By the way, I just want to say that I'm in a leather chair, and I've been making some movements that sound like farts, and I don't know if they're going to be edited out. I don't know. I just want to point that here that is my chair.
She's gassy today. It's fine.
No, it's my chair. Anyway.
Talk about etiquette. Oh my God.
If you all want to follow us on social media, we'll do a poll this week. I don't know what it will be on. But follow us on Twitter at The Good Eve Girls.
Or Instagram at The Good Evening Girls, where we post lots of fun pictures from our topics. They're interesting. Come on over.
I have to find that Norman Rockwell Ouija picture.
Yes. I'm like, what am I going to take? There's a lot of pictures of Emily Post online looking like, someone from the elite class.
Looking polite.
Looking extremely ethical. Polite.
Ethical cats.
Yeah.
And then you can follow us on Twitter or on TikTok at The Good Eve Girls.
Mm-hmm. And just remember, next week is going to be a doozy. A good doozy. A fun doozy, as it were. So tune in. And we can't wait to see you there.
We cannot wait.
Literally.
Until next time.
Until next time, my friends. Bye-bye.
Bye.